Borough Council, duly open and ready to conduct any business that may come before it.
Councilmember Tutino.
Present.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Sokolowski.
Here.
Councilmember Barton.
Here.
Councilmember Stokely.
Here.
Vice President Flanagan.
Here.
President Leonard.
Present.
Mayor Aronson.
Here.
I do have one special announcement tonight for myself and the rest of council and the borough administration. I would like to say that our wonderful borough manager did have her lovely little baby boy last week, and we're all very happy and excited for her and wish her well. And
Go ahead, say his name.
his name is Lorenzo Giuseppe Cecco, little going to be known as Enzo. So the first item on our agenda tonight is a presentation for the 2019 bike race with Richard Adler.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to have a preliminary chat with you all. My name is Richard Adler. I run a company called RA Events. I'm here today to have a preliminary chat about the relaunch and revival of an event that's been pretty historic to the region for over 30 years. Some of you, if you've lived in the Philadelphia market for 30 years, you're familiar with what has been the Philadelphia bike race. Started as the core states and had a series of successive names over a 30-year history. It's been on a hiatus for 2 years. I ran it for a couple of years when the city canceled it in 2013. We were asked by Congressman Brady at the time to step in, relaunch it. We relaunched it with my business, ran it for a couple of years. The city of Philadelphia then stepped in, ran it for a couple of years, but Mayor Kenny basically didn't want to be in the business of running bike races. Canceled it in 2017. There was an attempt to relaunch it in 2018, which went sideways, a bunch of guys from out of town. When that happened, we were contacted by the Valley Forge Tourism Group. I'm sure many of you are familiar with what has been reconstituted, really a Montgomery County Tourism Authority, goes under the name Valley Forge Tourism, is being very aggressive about bringing major world-class events to the region, particularly here to Montgomery County, and asked us, how do we relaunch this? How do we bring this piece of history to Montgomery County? So we have been in discussions, meetings with them since really going back to late December, early January. We actually met with Stephanie in late December as a preliminary meeting to kind of vet the idea of bringing this world-class event to Montgomery County, with Conshohocken really being a centerpiece for it. So the document that I believe she's distributed to all of you earlier, and which I just gave Brittany a copy to give to all of you as well, is a little bit of it's really 3 pages, a little background on what the event is, what the weekend would look like in June of 2019, and just some other basic details. But the idea is to really revive and refresh this historic event. As I mentioned, 30 years, it's been the biggest one-day bike race in the United States for all that time. There's still a tremendous following in the region for professional cycling, and there's still a tremendous interest in the world of cycling outside of Philadelphia to have Philadelphia back on the calendar. A lot of that has to do with technical stuff that I won't bore you with in terms of the flow of the professional racing calendar and where teams have to go and all of that kind of stuff. But suffice it to say, the first weekend in June still holds heavy for a lot of people in the sport that Philadelphia is not on the calendar anymore.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, yeah, absolutely. Any questions?
Is the city in with this?
Excuse me?
Is the city on board with this?
The city is not in this. We have talked with the city, but we have made a decision that, at least from the major race perspective, we want to bring that out of the city. And the city knows that. We've met with our contacts at the city. There are components, if you read through that middle section, that are some elements of what this race has been, which are smaller events within the city.
Right.
But we're talking about bringing the real keynote event out here. And with all the top teams, television exposure, crowds, if you ever went to Manayunk, we really think Conshohocken has the opportunity to really be the next Manayunk. And I'm not looking, huh?
They don't have a wall.
to, do a comparison, but people around the world still call it the Manayunk Bike Race, even though it hasn't happened for a couple of years. We think there's a real interesting opportunity to kind of take that and bring it out here to Montgomery County. So in our initial meeting with Stephanie and kind of walking through just really basic stuff, the decision was made, she felt, to kind of meet with you guys first, council, before having any administrative meetings with police, fire, city services. Usually we actually do that first to kind of get a sense of what we've created from a course perspective, so it gets vetted, but she felt it would be better served if we had an informal chance to talk with you about it, so that at least if there's a consensus, we can then have that meeting with police, fire, and so forth. So page 1 is kind of details. Page 2 is really just the map of what the Conshohocken
I do
portion
have
of
one
this
question,
event.
if I could interrupt 1 second, right here.
Sure.
I'm just going back to your last statement about the informal discussion with us and administration first. I just want to make sure that you understand that it has to come here first.
Well, no, but I'm understanding that now. In my
Okay.
initial conversation with Stephanie, that wasn't what we talked about. So I'm letting you know, when we first spoke, her first suggestion was get it vetted by administrative, not
Yeah.
council, not elected officials, but get it vetted administratively, so that when we sat down with you, because if you're going to ask, if you choose to ask me questions about the course and police, I can't answer those.
Correct.
Because we haven't had those meetings. I
Okay.
can tell you, just for whatever it's worth, I've been doing this for 30 years around the world. Most of the time, we actually do have those meetings first before we go to elected officials, when we're required to go to elected officials, so that the questions that you ask about city services are somewhat vetted. But in this case, we're not doing that.
Okay.
And so, just so you know, kind of the order of play as we were dictated to, or asked to do. So page 2 is the Conshohocken portion of the event. So you understand a little bit of what we've designed. This race is actually 2 races. It's a race, a men's race and a women's race. It's a high-level UCI world-rated event. We will bring teams in both internationally as well as all the top U.S. teams. No different than what the event has been historically here in Philadelphia when it was in the city. We have came up with actually someone pitched us the idea, we hadn't really thought of it initially, of kind of expanding the footprint beyond just Conshohocken. Folks in Ambler were very interested in being involved at some level. So we've actually created a course that actually starts in Ambler, comes down Butler Pike, comes here to Conshohocken, does 70 miles in Conshohocken on this course, which is a 7-mile course, so it'd be 10 laps. And we have met with Plymouth Township, we have met with White Marsh Township, we have met with the Borough of Ambler, similar meetings like this, because we know that this course is touching all of those. We probably need to have 1 or 2 more meetings, because there's pieces of Butler Pike that go through Skippack and I think Springfield, but we haven't gotten to those yet, but they're kind of a small piece. This is a big piece, Ambler's a big piece, and Gesundheit. So you can get a sense of what a course would look like. The teams would come across Ridge Pike and would basically race here in Conshohocken, up and down Fayette Street, around this perimeter on the outside, down North Lane, Elm, Hector, so forth. And really, the centerpiece for this event would be right out here on Fayette Street. It'd be the first opportunity ever since this race really existed for the athletes, the teams, to go up and down. You can only go up the wall, you can't go down the wall. But this is a great opportunity to climb a great road here, come down a road, really offer the opportunity to the businesses in the community to get huge crowds here, the restaurants and so forth, as it has historically done. And this third page is a sample timeline that we have put together based on our years of doing this, of kind of the impact on the community in terms of our setup and what would happen during the event day, which is a Sunday, and breakdown. So you have a real specific timeline of how that would work. And I'm happy to kind of answer any questions I can on that. Again, it's fairly technical, but the goal here would be hopefully to open it up to general questions, and then if, the interest is there, we would then sit down and meet with city services and administration to discuss kind of logistically how to do this. Another key piece of this, obviously, to do this requires funds. Part of our job as the owner and operators is to go out and raise those dollars, so we're in conversations, we have been for a while, and we continue to have them with sponsors, and that's what will fund this, is getting sponsors. We're not looking for the boroughs to put up any money. We pay city service bills, unless cities are willing to contribute certain things, and in some cases they are. Even in the case of Philadelphia, city often contributes, they own barricades, they provide them to you, that type of thing. But we look to pay police, we look to pay fire, sanitation, whatever needs are determined mutually. We have had, as I mentioned before, Valley Forge Tourism. Mike Bowman, who's the president of Valley Forge Tourism, is a big proponent of this. The opportunity to fill up a hotel right here in Conshohocken over race weekend with 3,000 room nights in early June, which is a pretty nice piece of business to have in an off season, as they've said to me. So we've made that commitment to Mike, that as part of anything we would do with them, obviously the hotel rooms would be here in Montgomery County, and we would certainly bring them here, at least the majority of them, to Conshohocken, since this would be the keynote place for the event. So that's, good to know from a piece of business perspective. We've also had the opportunity to speak with Valerie Arkush, Montgomery County Commissioner, big supporter. It helps that she's an avid cyclist, but she also looks at this and says, great event, potentially really impactful in a positive way for Montgomery County. As I'm sure you know, the Montgomery Planning Commission has started a very big initiative in terms of building out a trail system here in the county. Just put out a huge report. That's a long-term project, but it's something that an event like this, while it's not a trail event and it's not necessarily a participant event, it certainly brings a lot of attention to the area, very focused in the region for the sport of cycling. We work very closely with the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia, which is involved with all of the trail activity and advocacy, not just in the city, but everywhere, out to Chester County, Montgomery County, and so they would be involved. So those are a couple of other little key tidbits that I can share with you. Questions, comments?
Where does the proceeds go for all the profits?
This is an event that would be privately owned. So it's not set up as a not-for-profit. This is an event that is owned as a for-profit entity. That said, and that's what I do, that's my business, and my partner's businesses, but that said, there's always a charitable component to every event we do. And whether it's in this, I mentioned the Bicycle Coalition, they're a not-for-profit entity, whether it's working with them, whether it's working with our sponsors who have charitable components that are important to them when they are involved with events, or whether it's communities that say to us, look, we need to see some dollars go this way if you're doing something here. In the case of, we've worked with Parks and Rec departments when we come into small communities like this compared to being in the city of Philadelphia, say, look, we need a contribution to the Parks and Rec department to do X. So those are all things that we kind of sit down at a table and figure out, but this event it may be set up as a not-for-profit corporation, but it is not a charity. So I just think that's important to know.
Thank you.
Rich, have you considered other locations in Montgomery County, such as you mentioned, Collegeville, Schwanksville? They have bike trails, and they're not as heavy residential as we are, such a tightly compacted area where the impact will be great.
Yeah, well, no, because this really isn't a trail event.
No, I realize that, but I'm just saying they have a biking community also, and their residents are spread out much more
Actually,
than Conshohocken.
it's not that we haven't thought about it,
Right.
although we haven't thought about it, but I mean,
Right.
when we sat down and had the conversation, initially, kind of at a 30,000-foot level with Valley Forge Tourism and the county, the idea was, if we're going to do this and bring it out here, let's bring it to the, what they all believe is the most vibrant community in the county that has the potential, while it may also be the biggest inconvenience for a day, it also has the biggest potential positive impact to be able to really do something for the community in an event of this scale. And while I agree with you, the population here is denser than it probably is in Collegeville and Schwenksville, this is also a destination. So the opportunity for people to come here on the trails, on SEPTA, have the streets as crowded as those of you who went down and who've been to Manayunk on race day in the years past, and have this place on the map is, again, this is from my perspective, not from a resident's perspective, but we think is a big positive for a day. And, it's not just a day, it's a lot of PR that's going on leading into the event. It's television, it's live streaming, it's a lot of news coverage. And we would hope, as we have done in the past, and I think I'm happy to have you talk to the folks in Manayunk, who we work with pretty closely, Manayunk Development Corporation, a number of the businesses there who have been impacted because the streets closed, for 2 days there as well, historically. And I think they would tell you that on balance, the positives far outweigh the negatives for a day. And that's a pretty densely populated area as well.
I would have to disagree with you on that. I lived on the wall for 5 years, and the impact is immense.
I'm not
So-
suggesting that it's not immense. I didn't say it wasn't
it's
immense.
huge.
Yeah, no,
And-
I know it is. I'm not saying it.
It's a huge burden for the residents that live there and here.
It certainly has that potential,
A huge potential.
and that's what you have to weigh.
I understand what you're saying, Anita, but in trying to consider this, what is the reason that Manayunk, after so many successful years, has decided not to be a part of this?
Manayunk hasn't made that decision.
Philadelphia.
Well, a couple of things. As I mentioned before, we were running that event as a private entity with the city of in the city of Philadelphia. The city then took it over. The city chose to stop doing it. The economics,
And I'm
frankly,
sorry, and the reason?
economics. The city's not in that business. The city didn't want to have the financial burden of producing a bike race when they had a lot of bigger issues to deal with in the city.
So was it something that, when you say the economics of it, what happened what put them in that kind of position, that they were looking at that it wasn't economically?
It never was economically feasible. I mean, without getting into a lot of politics, you had a mayor at the time whose ego got in the way, Mayor Nutter, and said, I think we can do this better. If you may know that the city of Philadelphia actually runs the Philadelphia Marathon. So the city owns and operates that event. It's run out of the Parks and Rec, sorry if I did that, runs up by the Park and Rec Department. He just figured, if we do that, we can do this. And he was kind of woefully wrong. So there's a little bit of ego involved. I think he got caught in a tough position, and I can speak pretty honestly now since he's not mayor and I don't do business with him anymore. And, he thought he could either find someone else to do it, and what happened was he couldn't find anybody else to do it, and so he was kind of stuck with it. And so I don't know that he would say that, but that's basically what happened. So the city was bankrolling it. When Mayor Kenny came in, they did it once under Nutter's watch, and then Mayor Kenny came into office. And this wasn't a thing that was important to Mayor Kenny. But when he came into office in January of 2017, he wasn't going to do something about an event that was in June of 2017, so he let it roll. In 2016. So he let it roll in 2016. But when 2017 rolled around, the city was up against it. There was a big number that they had to cover, and he wasn't prepared to have the city spend the money. And at that same time, Congressman Brady actually did call me at the time again, because he heard the event was going to get canceled, and wanted to see if I could step in and help revive it. But at that point in time, it was too late. And so that's why it got canceled in 2017. So the city chose to say, you know what, this is not something Mayor Kenny's interested in doing. It's not his thing. We're out of this business. Canceled the event and moved on. And I think more specifically to answer your question, the economics of doing the event in Manayunk and in the city of Philadelphia are somewhat untenable. You're dealing with unions, police, and a much higher level of city services in the city of Philadelphia than we frankly expect would be the case out here in the townships. And I say that knowing I haven't met with any of these city services, but again, I have been doing this around the world and around the United States for 30 years. So I know, I have a little bit of a sense of what it's like doing business with small townships. I closed 56 miles of roads up in the Pocono Mountains for an Ironman race. Same thing, we went township by township, negotiated what we had to get city services and understand, close down downtown Stroudsburg, so we're kind of understand that. And as I'm sure you've read, most recently with the Made in America situation in the city is getting hit pretty hard by events that are closing roads. Every weekend, roads are getting closed. And the citizens are concerned, as Anita says. I mean, it gets a little tiresome when you live in the city and every weekend Kelly Drive is closed or the Parkway is closed. It's tiresome. I can accept that. And so I think that has a little bit to do with it. Could we go into the city and produce the race? Sure, but the economics of doing it in the city of Philadelphia just aren't there anymore. They just make it somewhat untenable. So we believe that if we're going to do this and put the effort in and put the financial investment in, a couple of things. One is we believe it's a little more financially viable to do it out here, number one. Number two, we also think this event with 30 years of history needs a complete revival and refresh. Now, that may not mean much to any of you who follow the sport or don't follow the sport, but, we think if you're going to do something, we're going to look to see if we can do it differently. We think that it can be a fantastic event here in Conshohocken. We think it's a great town, it's vibrant, it's got a ton of retail, a ton of reasons for people to come here, a real world-class event here on the streets. Is it an inconvenience for a day? Absolutely. Probably no different than other events that you do here in town, whether it's parades or car shows or whatever. This is at a grander scale, no doubt.
Mike, where would we get the, Mike, on the right. Chief Whirler. Oh, God. Take me back.
Chief Metz.
Chief Metz? Chief, it was so much easier. Where would we conjure up the manpower to do something like this? I mean, do we even have the manpower to cover something this big?
No, we don't. I mean, this would be totally based on mutual aid. This would be a county-wide event. There's not one municipality affected in this in any way that could do this by themselves. And if you just break it down briefly, you take Butler Pike. Butler Pike is the entire western part of the western border of White Marsh Township, which also has an element of this race on North Lane. The entire eastern border of Plymouth Township is affected. Plus, they have a section of North Lane involved. Whitbane Township has a section of Butler Pike event.
Right.
If you took the role of any one of those departments along that route, they couldn't do it alone. Now, if you look at our component here of the amount of intersections and road closures and population that we had to deal with, by far, we would be affected the most. We have a 20-man department here. For this event to happen, it would have to be done at the county-wide level. And it would be based totally on mutual aid, which I can't guarantee, because this is not the city of Philadelphia with 6,500 cops. We don't have a commissioner of the Montgomery County Police. We have individual municipalities who rely on each other, and we are all partners. However, something like this would require, this would be unprecedented, anything in the county. So I can't compare it to anything. I just know that it would be an endeavor. It's very ambitious. It would take a tremendous amount of manpower from every municipality in this county, if they're willing to provide it.
So if I can...
So is it even realistic to plan this size of an event in less than a year? With the
Yeah,
idea
yeah.
that there would need to be mutual aid?
Yeah, actually, if I can address your comments specifically. So as I mentioned, we have met with almost all those townships, and in some cases, the chief of police were in those meetings. So, so they've heard this. In some, like in the case of Plymouth Township, we had fairly specific conversations about the roads that we had presented to them, again, very preliminarily, because no one's had a chance to vet it completely. With White Marsh Township, they actually felt that they were the least impacted and asked us, when you've met with everybody else, come back to us. We like the idea. We think we can handle it. Not an issue. We met with Ambler as well. The Butler Pike portion, while it sounds daunting, because it's a big piece of road of 4 or 5 miles, it actually is the least daunting from a police management standpoint, because it will take the cyclist basically 15 minutes to get from there to here. And once they're here, the road's open again. So it's not something that's closed, just so you had a sense of what's going on. It's not something that's closed all day long. It's really closed till they cross Ridge Pike, once they leave Ambler. And that's, again, that's one component of what we're talking about. But to answer to address one other question about the county, we have we have talked with Tom Sullivan at the county. We have worked with him before on county-wide initiatives. Our production team, or the same team that just produced the Eagles Autism Ride, which came up here through Montgomery County, produces the Flyers Ride, which just came up through Valley Forge, had worked very closely with the county. A matter of fact, before we kind of turned this around to meet with elected officials, we were going to have a meeting. Tom was coordinating a meeting with all the townships to have a meeting to discuss the county-wide effort. And Commissioner Arkusha said, we'll provide whatever support we can provide once all the pieces are put together, because they know that this is a fairly big undertaking. So we've had those preliminary conversations. To answer your question, yes. I mean, from our perspective.
Yes, you think it's realistic to pull it all together in less than a year?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
we pulled this off, and maybe it's not a fair comparison, but when we took it over in the city, and I get it, it's the city, but it's still difficult. We got it done in 100 days. That's not something I would want to do every year of my life. But yeah, I think once you get everybody on the same page, yeah, then it's just kind of a coordination effort. So I don't think you could do this in 6 months, but I think we're on a timeline right now that, yes, you could do that. Absolutely.
And to speak to that point, I would say that at some point in this process, if this was approved and it was going forward, at some point in the process, this would become a full-time job for me or someone I appoint. Because, we think of parades and stuff as in terms of blocking all streets. It's way more than that.
Yeah.
And I do have some questions for you regarding, the city and why it's not there anymore. Do you think that the latest terror attacks in the world had any effect on this not being in the city?
Not at all.
If I could cite a source saying that the cost that the city, the Office of Emergency Management, and the police department put on this event after the Boston Marathon, that wouldn't be true?
Well, if it was not something they shared with us, because I will tell you that we were running the event when that happened. What was the year of the Boston Marathon bombing?
I'm not sure.
We were in charge. And yes, the city had to step in with Homeland Security, but that's what the city did, and that was on them. And, so I couldn't tell you how much they absorbed. That's the relationship between the feds and the city. And they had to do that, by the way, for every event that came into the city, not just ours, not just the bike race.
Right.
So is that a reason?
But wouldn't we have to do that also?
Depends.
Choice.
Not necessarily. I
Not
mean,
many people
that-
would
that-
have
that's
to.
not,
I would
you-
think we
that,
would
that's,
have to.
I don't know the answer to that question, Colleen, just
50,000
because I don't know the
people would have to.
relationship that you may have here. The city operates kind of in a different wavelength for certain things,
Well, I would think
based on
something.
size and scale.
And wait, so when was the last year that Philadelphia hosted it?
2016. Canceled by the city in 2017, in February of 2017.
So in your
In
opinion,
2018, it was announced by guys from out of town that frankly nobody knew that they were going to do the race, produce it. They're from St. Louis. They got a date from USA Cycling, which is the governing body of the sport. They gave them the date. Nobody really vetted them. They said they had a permit from the city of Philadelphia. They never got a permit from the city of Philadelphia, so when it ran up against it, they canceled it.
And, I've expressed my concerns about this, just practically, to you. And since the last time this race was held in this area, there's been a new dimension of terrorism. FTOs in the world are now supporting and training and using vehicle-borne ramming. And that's happened. It happened in New York City last year on a bike path. 8 people were killed, 11 were injured. This is a dynamic that is now being faced, and we can't approach these things as closing roads.
Right.
These things have become a counter-terror organization, a counter-terror operation, and that's what makes it daunting. It's not just the manpower to close roads and all. There's way more to that than that. It's happened at the Boston Marathon. Why couldn't it happen here? You say it was the largest single-day professional bike race in the country, correct? That's a big event, and that attracts attention. So this would be, what I'm saying is, I can't compare it to anything because we've never done anything like this here. They've done it in the city and they no longer do it there. That concerns me. Do you have a contact in the city of Philadelphia that you dealt with in either Office of Emergency Management or the police department that I could talk to?
You can call Giselle Jones, who's the managing director of special events in the city, and who's been doing this for 30 years.
Giselle Jones?
Yeah. I know Giselle. I met with her 2 months ago, so I've worked with her for many, many years. So she's certainly a senior level person. She is the person responsible for coordinating, the Pope's visit, the NFL draft, pretty large scale events in the city. And great lady and, very connected in the city and has been doing this for many, many years. So she understands kind of that operational component that you're addressing. I can tell you that if you look across, and I don't know this for a fact, although I can certainly vet it for you, there are actually more cities like this that are hosting events like this than there are major cities. And that's a little bit of why the history of Philadelphia is what it is. When I say that Philadelphia, what I said was that Philadelphia was the largest one-day bike race in the country because it was the biggest city in the United States to hold a one-day bike race. So if you look at the landscape of the sport of cycling, without, again, getting too esoteric about it, most of these events don't happen in major cities anymore. The biggest cycling event in the United States is the Tour of California, which is a 6-day event. Just, happens in May. It's kind of like the Tour de France, but not really, but it's the best comparison I can make. A 6-day event, goes up and down through California. It goes in LA on some years, but most of the time it's in Sacramento, Redding, markets like that, where it's a bigger deal. And frankly, the issues that you're addressing, which are all legitimate issues, I'm not poo-pooing them at all, but they're a lot easier to manage than when you go into a major metropolitan market. And so, those are factors that we are used to dealing with. It's a lot easier closing 56 miles of roads, as I did up in 6 townships up in the Poconos, than it is here. That would never happen in the city. They would never do that. So
of this entire course,
excuse me?
of this entire course,
Yeah.
what percentage of it is in Conshohocken?
70.
70 miles, so how many?
70,
Well, but
75%.
it's 10. It's a 7-mile loop.
It's 7 miles of Conshohocken, 5 miles of Ambler-ish, 1 mile-ish of White Marsh, 1 mile-ish of
But then they
Plymouth.
do our 10 mile,
But-
our
but
7
it's
miles 10
in 10
times.
times
So
all day
the
long.
percentage would still be much
When
higher.
I did all of the math from the route, it's 14.6 miles from Ambler to Conshohocken. when you break down those miles, Conshohocken comes out to about 7 miles of it, but it's 10 laps, so it's 70 miles.
All right,
So-
the first 5 laps, as we've designed this, again, this is all very preliminary. This is what we've designed, what we think would be a challenging event for the cyclists, a great spectator event. It's hard for us to address impact on, we know impact on community, we get that, but until we sit down and have these discussions in detail, the type of impact, because some townships we can go into and say, yeah, no problem, got it covered, we know how to do this, or the route you created is not, yes, it impacts the citizens, but it doesn't impact traffic flow as much as if you did something else. So and I'm just saying, we haven't had those conversations, so we don't know that yet until you sit down.
But basically, the plan you have right now shuts down all our traffic flow in and out of town.
No, I understand that, absolutely.
So
I understand that it
White
shuts
Marsh and
down.
Whippane and Plymouth are minimally impacted. It would be the residents of Conshohocken who will be impacted severely.
We understand that.
Who is
That's
I mean,
why
we
have
understand
to
that
weigh
kind of-
this
Can
much
I-
more carefully.
Can I just ask, who is the "we" that you keep talking about in the design? Is it a steering group made up of?
No. There's a company called G4 Productions, or G4 Events, who is my production partner in this. And they're in the business of producing bike races for 30 years. So we're partners in this. So you can look her up, G4 Events. They were involved with this race since day
Okay, so
one.
there was no one local that you consulted with or worked with to come up with this?
Well, one of the people on that team lives locally, lives in the region, so knows the area and knows the roads. But no, we didn't, because, again, we come up with what we believe, and we realize that it's in a little bit of a vacuum. We understand that. That's kind of how you have to do these things at the outset, and that's why you go through this process. We come up with what we believe works within the construct of what you need to do for a race. And we then sit down and with elected officials, administrative officials, and say, okay, what's doable, what's not doable? That's the process. So even if we had gotten the police chief to come with us on that, the input he would have had would have helped, but it may not have necessarily been, it would have been a little bit of a round peg in a square hole without the context of what we need to do. Now, that said, that's why when we do these meetings, usually, we say, look, this is what we think can work for the event. Now you need to let us know if it's doable. You may all say, look, too much of an impact, not interested, and we go on our merry ways. Or we sit down and we meet with the police chief, other folks, city services, and say, okay, we get it, we get that the big picture here. We think it can be great for the community, but we need to be able to do A, B, C, D, and E. And we figure out if we can do that.
So in your opinion, why do you think major sponsors have pulled out of this event, which led to the financial impact on Philadelphia in the past?
I don't think they pulled out, they just couldn't find any. And it kind of gets back to, look, we had a major casino as our title sponsor for a number of years when we took the race over. They would have stuck with the event if we were still running the event. They didn't want to stick with the event when the city was running the event.
Okay.
It really is that simple.
But do you have sponsors for
No,
this at
that's,
this
as
point?
I said earlier, we're in the process, that's what we do. We're out there looking for sponsors, and
Or are you
if
looking
we
for
don't,
major sponsors, or are you looking at the
no,
local
we're
level?
looking to raise major sponsorship. And look, I'll be very honest with you, if we don't succeed in that, we don't do this.
That was going to be my question.
No,
That's where the money
absolutely.
comes from,
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely. The
I'm just
vast
trying to get
bulk-
this whole picture. The money
Absolutely.
comes from sponsors.
The sponsor, to her point,
Excuse me?
when would you need to have that sponsorship?
Probably within the next 90 days. And that's what we're working on. And we have a bunch of interested parties. Now, they haven't signed on the dotted line, and that's our job, is to get them to sign on the dotted line. We're not going to put ourselves at the risk that the city was putting itself at when they were doing this, which is why they didn't.
Talk to the
want
state?
Excuse me?
Like this? Have you talked to anybody in the state about this race? Because say we have the race and you can have Fiat Street, and the state comes in and said, no, we can't close it down. So you have to call the state. We don't own Fiat Street.
We understand that.
The state owns that. And
We
we don't own
understand.
Hector Street.
We know
If we
that.
give you the okay and you, then the state comes in, they could shut you down right away.
They could, but they won't. But PennDOT is somebody we deal with on a regular basis. We had to deal with PennDOT on the Eagles Autism Ride because part of it was going on state roads. So these are ongoing relationships that we have, and it's also part of this process. It's part of this vetting process. But look, if at the end of the day, the Borough of Conshohocken Council says, look, not interested, okay, then we're not going to go meet with PennDOT because the piece of the road of PennDOT that we need is minimal, and, you know, silly to go have that meeting. Same reason that the White Marsh Township folks said, look, come to us last. The streets you're using in White Marsh, we think we can accommodate you, not a problem, you know, at least preliminarily. You know, go have the bigger meetings that you need to have. This group, Ambler, which we had a couple of weeks ago.
And that's my next question.
Sure.
So, and this might be a repeat. So we're looking at the mileage as, for the men, 110, 10 times 7 for the Conshohocken circuit, so that's 70.
Right.
The balance of it mixed between the three, but that, the balance of that 40 would be Ambler.
Ambler and Butler Pike portion.
Okay, and the Butler Pike that you already spoke to, they're kind of okay, there's not a whole lot of disruption there?
I can't tell you that for sure. I said that there were two of the townships that Butler Pike runs through that we have not spoken with them. Ambler, Mayor Sorg is very supportive. We met with Borough Council. They were. And
how about their police department and their whole?
From the initial feedback that we got from them, it was very positive. Keep in mind that they have, up until actually this year, hosted a small cycling race every August. It happened to get canceled this year. So they, you know, she, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she's been very supportive. The response from council at the meeting was very supportive. We have not sat down and met with the police because
Okay,
for the same reason.
So when you say the initial, because a very important part for us is while we're looking at it, it's going to be how our police department and all of the safety measures that need to be taken is really what has to happen. Because from my perspective, initially when I looked at it, I mean, it's a wonderful way to showcase Conshohocken. It's a very exciting event. There's many things that are part of it, but at the end of the day, what's important is the safety, the degree of disruption to our constituents, and that kind of all rests here.
Exactly.
So knowing that if you had the meeting with Ambler and it was an initial meeting, even just kind of what kind of concern do you have there? Because is this something that is really feasible? Like how are they looking at it?
I mean, I don't mean to sound ignorant, but I don't know how they're looking at it because we were asked to go through a very specific process, which for us is kind of the tail wagging the dog.
Right.
Honestly, you know, we usually get the opportunity to sit down with police before having these meetings, so at least you have a sense. Because if we had sat down with him first and staff and the county, which was initial thought, we would probably be able to address a lot of these issues that you're asking about. And so the idea was to have this all county-wide meeting. It was scheduled for June 26th, actually, and he was reaching out. You may have gotten an email from him, you know, about having a meeting with all the townships that this event was touching for exactly that purpose. And if everybody had walked out of that meeting saying, look, not doable, we don't believe it's doable, and even if he said, we'll provide all the support we can, then I wouldn't be standing here in front of you today. But the only way to vet what you're asking about is you're giving me the ability to sit down and meet with the police.
Curiosity, why start it in Ambler and come here versus start here and go there? Just curiosity.
They actually asked the same question because they really would love to have it finished there, or would leave to have one of them finished there. And the idea is, again, our creative idea is either, you know, one starts there and finishes here and vice versa, or 1 year it starts there and finishes here, and the next year it starts here and finishes there. I mean, in part because this is a much bigger downtown. So the
then
infrastructure.
What would that mean as far as the impact here? So if it did finish there, how much
Start.
would that reduce?
If it finished here, if it started here and finished there?
Yeah.
It would change the impact. I mean, this thing, you'd still have roads closed, excuse me, but you'd probably have, there'd be an opening at one point in time, and then when the next race, because you usually let's say you do the men's race first, and then the women's race,
How much are they staggered?
there's usually an hour break in between them. So, and it a little bit depends on the order, because the women's race is a little shorter. So if the women's race goes off first, let's say there's an hour finish, so the race, let's say it goes off at 8, women's race would end at 11, the men's race would go off at noon, you'd still have to have the staging area. You couldn't open the roads completely. And by the way, I think this is, you ask a good question, which raises an interesting point. When we shut down a city, or when we build a facility and close down a main road, it's not like yes, it's closed to vehicular traffic, it has to be, but it doesn't completely close down people's ability to move around. We don't expect.
This map would do that.
Our whole town would be shut
This
down.
does.
It talks about our emergency vehicles.
Yeah, that's what our
No, but
thing,
we work with SEPTA all the time. When we shut down in Manayunk and everywhere else, we're working with SEPTA to do that. We're not doing this kind of in a vacuum.
I appreciate you coming and talking to council, but your big argument with the chief, public safety, fire chief and everything, and then let them come back and explain it to us.
Exactly. Well, that's what I wanted to do 2 months ago.
That's right, because the chief.
Absolutely.
The chief and these, all the public safety going to have the main say, and it's not us.
Agreed. I'm with you 100%.
Okay, does anyone on council have any more
Yeah,
pertinent questions?
I have another question. Is the objective here that the municipalities that this would affect wouldn't have to put out any money, that the bike race would pay for all the impact, soft and hard costs?
I don't know how you define soft costs, but it would be, we pay city services. So if you give us a police bill, I'm making up a number, for $10,000, we're paying that bill. And part of the sit-down with everybody is to determine what that is.
But that payment would come after the fact, correct?
Whatever the mutually negotiated terms are.
All right.
All right, so I think that the question may come down to is, what do we think about follow-up conversations? Because to everybody's point, this is something that needs to be determined, or at least really some significant input from all of the sources that you just mentioned. So do we want to have future conversations that would include the chief of police, safety, the fire
I think right now we can just say that we all need to have more discussion on it, and then decide if or when we need to discuss it with our departments.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then just to also be mindful of our time constraints, because I know that you're saying how much time you would need, so.
We have a voting meeting in 2 weeks, so
Yeah.
we can have it done by then.
Okay, is there
Everyone?
anything else then
And
that
I
we
would
need?
think about the cost. That would be a huge factor for us, whether or
us.
not it would be a cost to us at all, because quite frankly, I think we're extending way more than White Marsh, Plymouth, Whippane, and Ambler are. If you're doing 70 miles of the race in Conshohocken, it's an 100-mile course.
It's a lot of manpower,
That's a
a lot of
huge,
hours.
that's a huge burden on Conshohocken versus the other 4 municipalities.
Yeah, I hear you. I would look at it I would not look at it from a mileage perspective.
But at time, that
I
would
would
be
look
the
at it
time
from a
they're
time
here.
perspective.
Okay.
No, agreed.
But it's
I'd
still
look
the
at it from a
impact,
time
how long we
perspective.
would have to shut down.
Right, well, I think if you look at,
All 4 major roads in Conshohocken.
so I
would
think
be
if you
shut
look
down.
at that timeline, and which, I'm not expecting you to kind of analyze it carefully, but I think that's what the police, and that's what we do. We ask them to
chief
sit
and the fire
down
marshal would be the
and
best
say,
people to
look,
look at that.
these are the roads, this is the timeline of city services needed, this is when we're here, this is when we're out of here,
Right.
tell us what it takes and what's doable. And if it's
Probably
doable,
what
it's
we need
doable.
to do is, in advance of our voting meeting, any questions that we have that would be directed to you, we would funnel through Brittany, so that we are best prepared to look at this in 2 weeks.
Yes, I think
Right, and that's what we normally do, so I think everyone's got that already. So if no one has anything else for Mr. Adler this evening,
No, thank you for the information.
Thank you so much for your
Thanks,
time.
appreciate the window of opportunity. Yeah.
Mr. Sokolowski?
I picked up my grass clippings.
So my information is more of informational more than a presentation. So there's two things that we've discussed recently that will affect each and every one of your wards. One of them has to do with the residents, one of them has to do with the businesses. In an effort to look at costs, cost savings, manpower coverage, things like that, we have recently looked at two things that one of them sounds relatively minor and turns out not to be. During recycling pickups on Wednesdays for yard waste, grass clippings have become a huge issue. Upper Merion Township will not take our grass clippings anymore. So
Why is that?
well, in researching this, they never knew they did.
Oh, jeez.
So basically, they were unaware of the fact that they were taking them.
Who told them?
They somehow found out that they were. So
So they're gonna give us a back bill.
Let's give it to
probably.
White Marsh.
so they have a facility there that takes care of recycling materials. However, they do not take grass clippings because of the damage that it causes to their machinery. They don't take it in their own township. Upper Merion Township does not take grass clippings for their own residents, but they were taking Conshohockens. So needless to say, we got a letter and we have to take care of that. So right now, it's actually in our ordinance. So we have to have an ordinance change. The wording in the ordinance, that has to be removed. We're not going to take that as of 2019. 2019, we're going to stop. We already have it in our newsletter that'll be coming out soon, what our recommendations are to the residents. We also are going to put it on the website, and this is just information so you know when you get the phone calls that this is
What are we?
What do we do with tree branches?
Yes,
all that stays the same.
Okay.
So
it's just grass.
not to get into the whole thing, Plymouth does it, White Marsh does it. They've combined, they combined and bought a $500,000 piece of equipment that allows them to do it. They need the grass because it provides nitrogen to break down yard waste, to break down branches. But they don't need any more. Upper Merion does not do that. They don't handle it in the same manner. So we are not in a position to spend $500,000 for machinery to do that. So currently, we have made arrangements to handle what we are able to handle for the rest of the season in grass. After that, it will be strictly yard waste, which is branches, trees, things like that. We'll still take it. Upper Merion will take it, and we pay them to take it. But right now, they will refuse to take loads. So if we go over there with that kind of material and get caught, then we have to bring another truck in to pick it up and bring it back to Conshohocken. Sounds like a little problem, but it can become a big problem very quickly.
Okay.
So that's one of the issues that we looked into. The other issue is an operational issue with picking up trash of commercial properties. About 64 properties in the borough of Conshohocken get their trash picked up commercially. We're no longer going to do that as of 2019. We spend about 10 man-hours a week just to do the commercial portion of the trash removal of 64 properties. They also do recycling for those 64 properties. We have a company who does our auditing for recycling. We talk to them. They don't believe that we should have ever been in the business of commercial trash pickup. They recommended we don't do it. We still will get all the credit for recycling. So part of their auditing process is they go out to the individual trash companies that pick up recycling, and they get their weights. The weights are what goes into our auditing, and that's what DEP looks at. So when we go and get we apply for our grants, we still get that credit. So there's really no reason for us to be involved in it. And the fact that we have manpower involved in it, we can pull that manpower out to do other things.
Right. And the commercial properties do, I'm assuming, pay for that service from us right now, correct?
They do. They pay for by the weight. And our weight is, this should not be a big impact to these businesses.
No,
because
there's many
Our
of-
costs are pretty similar to what they'll be able to go out and get.
Right.
From
Okay.
different
Private.
agencies, trash agencies.
Right.
In fact, that particular, that cost should be pretty good right now because there's a lot of smaller companies who've come into the market, and there's a lot of competition between those companies. 64 new customers,
It's a
we
big
would
deal.
probably get that taken care of relatively quickly. We're putting it out to the individual businesses on a one-on-one basis. We'll stop and talk to them and tell them that they should be looking to have a company come in, and definitely by 2019, they should have the turnover. Again, it's just one of those things that I think cost-wise, the benefit in the long run will be beneficial to the borough.
Okay.
And Ray, when you're talking to these commercial properties, are you also reiterating that there is to be no pickup before 7 o'clock in the morning?
The ordinance is what it is. It's obviously, I know you've had that problem, and there are several issues with that. That 6 a.m. timeframe,
7.
that 6 a.m. timeframe, which they do show up for, these outside companies, it's something that we'll have to address at some point. It's a difficult period of time for anybody. We don't have staff. In my other department, the code enforcement, licensing especially, we don't have staff in it that morning. That's kind of I know for the police department, that's kind of 6 o'clock in the morning is a difficult time. It's the end of a shift.
Thought it was 7, Ray.
It's 7 o'clock, but
Right.
6 o'clock is when they decide to show up. It's usually between 5 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the morning when these companies that are outside of our ordinance decide to show up. It's not like we haven't put it out there. So
Oh, I know.
there'll be informational, we're going to put out we're going to put out a process for
Okay.
the new for the 64 companies that we deal with now, 64 businesses that we deal with now. They'll have information as to who they can reach out to. There's probably 12 local companies that do those things to the trash pickup. But it'll also indicate that we are going to be auditing those companies for the recycling, and it'll also indicate that those companies have to adhere to any of our ordinances, including the time.
Thank you.
So can
Thank
we
you.
have a meeting with them?
With the businesses?
Because we don't want 15 different trash companies coming into this town. Right now, we have chaos with traffic and parking. If we have 8 or 9, say 8 different trash companies coming into town, pick up commercial trash, it's gonna be a disaster. Parking in the middle of the street, picking up when they want.
We have that
I mean, I'm gonna talk about that tonight. It's getting to be a disaster in town.
Well, we have to come up with a happy medium there, too.
Wait,
So
don't we have
that's the-
commercial properties that already pay?
we do. Actually,
So-
the majority of them do. The
So,
majority of the commercial buildings
I'm going to
pay.
assume they're not all done by the same company either.
They are not. So that's,
So-
to his point, that's what he's saying, that there's
Right.
already, there's probably, you're probably right on,
Yeah.
like the 15 companies that come in.
And I would assume companies will be encouraged to contract to more than, as will the businesses. The businesses will get the best rate if
Right.
there's more companies anyway with one trash company. So I don't think that should be a problem. I think that the companies themselves should be able to handle that also.
No, we have to come up with a happy medium. We
Right.
have an ordinance that says 7 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Is that something we need to look at? Maybe it
Well,
is, because
and-
the impact at 7 o'clock in the morning or later is greater to our traffic in the borough than it would be if they did come in earlier.
Right.
So is that something that probably needs to be looked at? Sure, it needs to be looked at. It might not be a favorable. Here's the issue, and I understand. The issue is that we do have businesses mixed in with a bunch of residentials, but we also have businesses that are not mixed in with
Right.
residential.
And they could
So
schedule
if they come in
accordingly.
at 5:45 in the morning to do what they need to do, and they're gone, we come in, our guys start at 6:30 in the morning, so they're out at 7 o'clock, and they're part of the traffic problem in the borough in some respects.
Correct.
So should we look at that? Yes, as a whole, this is an entire picture that we need to repaint
Yeah.
This is just a small part of it. This is another issue that's small, and you
Are you
get
giving us
105,000
baby steps
phone
here?
calls.
Are we getting baby steps, Ray?
That's
Okay.
pretty much what's happening, yes.
Okay.
yes.
So I have a question, and maybe I missed this, but regarding the grass clippings,
Mhm.
when does that end, and what happens moving forward after that?
Well, in the newsletter that you'll be getting pretty soon, there's an entire article on it. So we've researched it, we've talked to different agencies, including the ones in town, on how to handle that. And most municipalities are suggesting very simply that grass clippings are meant to go back onto the grass. They're not meant to be picked up, put in a bag. Most commercial properties, that's exactly what they do. If they're, doing an acre lawn, they're not picking up the grass, they're leaving it there.
I know, because in country, a lot of landscapers don't get no grass clip anyway, they blow it in the
Yeah.
street.
In the street, yep.
No problem. So, yes, that is another problem. But that in itself is probably the best solution to this problem, and is to leave them there. But there are people who are not going to want to do that. There are not many options for that. Some municipalities are putting it in their trash, which will be highly recommended we do not do that. Because if anyone knows what those trash bags weigh when they're first cut, that will add to our costs on the trash end, which will probably then explode over the summer, and our budget will be completely out of whack. So the good thing about having these two departments together now is our enforcement part of this will coincide with the implementation of this. So there'll be a slow and steady baby steps on the enforcement part of it. As the other part gets implemented, there'll be a lot of discussions, a lot of hangers on doors, and then eventually we'll have to get into the enforcement side, as we will on all these issues. These issues, bags, plastic bags that you see, and all these issues were small, and now they seem to have become big, very big, to the point where people are just shrugging their shoulders and figuring, what are we going to do? What are we going to do with styrofoam? What are we going to do with the plastic bags that you get in Giant? What kind of all of that's going back to the municipalities to come up with a solution.
So Ray, we're still,
No, we can't use goats. There's an animal ordinance, and you may not have goats, you may not have sheep, you may not have horses, you may not have.
but you can have chickens,
And roosters.
Chickens are not in there.
right?
You can have
So,
chickens and
Ray,
roosters, yeah. And
You're still going to
turkeys.
collect leaves, correct?
That's the same.
Because that will be the question I know I will get from.
We're still doing that. There's
Okay.
no intention on stopping that, because that affects our MS4, our stormwater
Right.
It does,
Right,
yes.
it does.
facility,
clogs all,
and so
right.
So Ray,
we have to do that. In
On
fact, that's going to be a
So-
discussion in the future
On
as
that
to how
note-
we,
Right, can you just
raise
put a
those.
sentence in that saying that leaf collecting will still happen in the fall, because we will all get questions
Right.
about the leaves.
So what happens if the residents put their grass in the gutters?
what if they, I'm sorry, say that again?
Put that grass in the gutters?
That is technically a violation of an ordinance. In the
So
current
we need
ordinance, it
to,
says
we need
that.
to, at some point, put that in print too, so they do
Well, that is,
realize that.
that,
Is that in the,
that
that's
is
in the article?
ordinance
Okay.
that says that they have to keep it on their property.
Okay,
So,
right.
to Ike's displeasure in many parts of the borough of Conshohocken, landscapers tend to throw it into the street, it becomes an issue.
Yes,
And that again goes to our stormwater facility.
correct, that's why I asked.
It's
That's where it
a,
all winds up at, in the
It's a
sewer line.
constant
Right.
cycle
Okay.
that, unfortunately, especially because we're next to a river, we are going to have to address more and more. Monetarily, it's going to cost more. Equipment-wise, it's going to be a capital issue in the future, but we have no way out of it.
Okay,
Or the mulch
Okay.
power.
thank you very much, Ray.
Thank you, Big Ray.
The next item on our agenda is consider 1023 Fayette Street zoning hearing board application. Chris?
August is going to be an extremely busy month for zoning. This is one of 6 different hearings that we have applications filed for. Actually, it's one of 7. So the property at 1023 Fayette Street, you're probably all familiar with it. It's at the corner of Fayette Street and 11th Avenue. It is in the residential office zoning district. The property is 4,476 square feet. Right now on the property is a 1-story building. It is not attached to any other building. It is on that property. The only other features on the property are off-street parking. The owner of the property has been non-conforming forever. It was a doctor's office, it was a lawyer's office, it was a construction office, it's just had a number of different uses, many of which have gone through change of non-conforming use processes to receive special exceptions for that. The current proposal, the owner of the property right now proposes to expand this building. Right now, the building is 960 square feet. They're proposing to expand it to 3,200 square feet. A special exception is required to expand the non-conforming use. A variance is required to expand the non-conforming use more than 25% of the gross square footage of the building. The ordinance allows expansion one time of a non-conforming use within the building, not more than 25% of the gross square footage of the building. They're proposing to provide 9 parking spaces on the site based on the square footage and proposed to be used as offices. That would require, I think, 16. There are also some variances required for buffering of the parking lot. Residential office has its own requirements for that because the property is next to a residential property. Mr. DePietro is here, Mr. Caiucci is here, who's the owner of the property, and their architect is also here.
Chris, are they going up or out?
A little of both.
Little of
They're
both.
going up 1 story, and it appears that it's going over a bit.
The building right now is smaller than
Yeah.
all the houses.
Oh, yeah,
It's
it is.
ridiculously
It's-
tiny, yes.
yeah,
So-
absolutely.
One
That's why I
story
asked.
anomaly
Yeah.
on Fayette Street.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
Mr.
It's a little
DePietro?
hut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't it political at one time, too?
It's been, it probably was.
Good
It's
evening.
been everything.
As
Good evening, John.
the zoning officer indicated, this is a tiny building. It's really out of date. It needs repair. In fact, it was on the market vacant for 10 months because the market demands for office space are just not met there with the current size. We wanted to get council's feedback for the expansion. We are going basically up, although a little bit out. There are a number of dimensional variances required because the lot is non-conforming, but it makes sense in order to meet the demands of the marketplace and perhaps for one single user to have additional space, because we've run into trouble trying to rent it out because it's too small. There are presently, I believe, 9 spaces. Depending on the size of the space, there could be 8 or there could be 9. If we ask for a variance to make the space 8 by 18 rather than the required 9 by 18, then we'd ask for a variance. Otherwise, we could have 9 spaces. Mr. Caiucci is here, as well as Sam King, his architect, if you have any questions. But the bottom line is that we think what is happening on Fayette Street, what is in that neighborhood, the Conshohocken physical therapy, modern-looking, future-looking. Yes, the properties further down south on Fayette, the big brownstones, they're sort of white elephants, although they are attractive. We think that the design should be in between with the proposal for the Wawa that's supposed to happen at the Moore site. That would be a modern type building. You've got Town Valet Cleaners, which is not red brick. You've got some other properties, the doctor at the corner at 11th and Fayette. So it's a mixture. We think that the new architecture would be an added attraction. It's sort of the gateway either out or into the borough, and it would combine with what's in the vicinity. But we'd like to get your feedback. We are scheduled for zoning on the 20th of August for those dimensional variances. And I'd be happy to have Sam or Bobby answer any question that council or the solicitor or the mayor might have. Thank you.
You guys,
What's the business going to be? What's it going to be?
Don't know the business yet. I'd like to get the approval, so then we can market it to businesses that fit that zoning. And then
Is it two, are you going up 2 or 3?
2.
2? So it'll make it 3, okay.
Oh, no, going up one.
No, no.
no,
Oh,
we need
okay,
to make
okay.
it 2.
It's one story now, we go up to.
Good 2, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and again, obviously, whatever use is there would be use by right, Bob.
Do you have-
What's in it now?
Salamo Contractors.
Yeah.
Do you have any drawings that you could show us what it might look like, or is that tentative?
It's still in flux a little bit. I didn't know if you guys had a copy of the zoning.
Did you get a copy
We
of the
did,
site?
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's on there, there's a couple of elevations.
So everybody could see it.
Let me turn it there, John.
Turn it sideways, John. There you go.
Okay.
So they're coming
I don't want to
in.
speak for Sam, but we tried to blend it in as much as possible, but also be something that's new, fresh, vibrant, that might fit in with what is expected to happen up at that end of Fayette Street.
Let's say, Conshocken's got really beautiful old architecture, and you can't recreate that. That's there, it's
Right.
looked upon, embellished, and such.
Use the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
It's very hard to hear. It's hard
Sorry.
to hear you, Sam.
I was saying, so Conshohocken is some really great old Victorian homes and such, and some really great architecture that we just can't recreate. It's too expensive.
That it's much louder.
Is that on?
It might not be turned
Check.
on.
Better?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
thanks.
Thank you.
So,
Is it a
now,
combination of glass
So you don't
and
have
brick?
to start over again.
okay, yes, it's a combination of, it's just simply just glass and brick. So, trying to not embellish it too much and try to create something that's overly ornate or way too,
Moderate.
just way too modern, but just kind of keep it classic, kind of keep it simple. Let this be more of a background building compared to the older traditional stuff that's in the neighborhood. So I think looking at it and I think if you all know the site, it's a small little
narrow.
building. It's kind of a missing tooth along the street.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right? So this is basically just kind of it's like a placeholder.
So, and for information also, I know that it appears to be very tall, but in retrospect to the homes that are there,
It's smaller, it's shorter.
right. It's not going to tower.
Yeah, so if you look at there, like, do you see a size, for scale, the size of a car, right? And then it's
Yeah.
only 2 stories. It's like 27 feet. So it's actually shorter than
House.
the homes in
Right.
there. It's not
Right.
raised
They're
off the
30.
ground like most of them are with the raised
35.
porch. So it's kind of quiet in the background. We wanted to leave it like that, and we don't want to kind of create a cheaper imitation of a older Victorian home. I think that would just do disservice to the sort of the real architecture that's there. So we're just trying to keep it quiet, and I know it's a bigger gesture than what's already there, but I think that corner needs it, and unfortunately, by doing such, we do, we're trying to squeeze as much parking in, and I know that's an issue with the borough and trying to create just easier parking and off-street parking. So I think it's a good compromise, and again, for the use that I think Bob is looking to fill, it's not a retail, it's not a restaurant, it's an office. So I think
And
that-
it does complement the physical therapy building
Yes,
to
that's
an
what I was
extent
thinking.
too. So it
Yeah.
kind of
Mirror-
ties it
it
in.
almost
whoever the
mirrors it.
architect on that building did an awesome job.
Yes.
He did. He truly did. And we'll
That
do
was
this.
good.
We'll do this for you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
To add a little bit to that, we've talked about this for over a year, and I think I know all of you, and I've been here my entire life, and I know the neighbors, and I know the businesses, and I think part of this for me and for Sam and talking to John is to do something that works for everyone as much as possible. Obviously it has to work for me to put money out to do this, but I'm friends with all the neighbors on that street for the most part, and I want to do something that's as low impact as possible. And also something that's good for the town. I know there's many different uses that it could be, I don't know if we'll find the perfect use that's great for me, for the town, and for the neighbors. But with this, we tried to find something that would be a statement on that corner that's nicer than what's there, because what's there needs to be fixed. It's in really bad shape. It was very hard to get a tenant in the condition that it's in.
Talk to the neighbors about doing this?
I've had some conversations. I haven't gotten into what the use is going to be because I don't know.
Yeah,
I haven't
just-
shown them
just
this.
A more modern building up there and something different on Fayette Street. Are you getting any sense?
I haven't had
Neighbors
in-depth
are-
conversations. I've talked to them, and I would openly go and speak to everyone in that neighborhood. I've done that when we had our office done. I have no problem doing that. I just wanted to get a sense from you guys, and I'm looking for some guidance too. If you said, hey, we hate it, maybe I can come up with something that's better, but I just need it to work as well. And,
Right.
and just fixing what's there, we tried that. It's hard to find a tenant in that space, but it is a great spot. It has parking. It has
It's a
7 to
great
8 spots
location.
now, and we're trying to make it more efficient and get possibly 9 spots and improve that and improve the impervious coverage. So I'm just looking for that open dialogue just to figure out what's best. And I think it's a beautiful design. That would be a nice statement on that corner. Obviously, the business is
No
going to determine.
LED signs on the building right now, right?
No,
And no bright lights, please.
no,
Okay.
no.
Your side of your parking lot, is that a fence, or were you planning on putting more plants in there?
Which one, over here?
Yes,
That right now is just a fence.
just a fence?
And certainly love to plant that, but then it impacts the amount of parking spaces. So
Okay.
I think, the fence, is an important element of
Right.
when
Okay.
it comes to design.
So if council looks at this favorably, we would certainly expect your support or suggest your support so that we could go to the zoning board. I think it's important, as Bob said, to realize that this will be marketed for one single user. We're not doing multiple users, which would increase traffic and all of that. But to do that, because of the size right now, we really have to add a second story.
Ms. Stetler?
I have one final comment on your questions about signage. Signage in this district is a bit different than the signage in the other commercial districts in the borough. You're only allowed 10 square feet.
Right.
And it has to be externally illuminated, 10 feet from a curb. So they're going to be, we've tried to be a little bit flexible in that if someone doesn't want a monument sign, a freestanding sign, that they could put the 10 square feet on the building. Again, no internal lighting, only external lighting. The size is 10 square feet for one tenant.
Okay.
Now, that goes up if there are additional tenants in it, but no, they're not going to be able to do multiple signs, things on the roof, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Looks good to me.
I think it looks good. Yeah.
Do we have to do a motion or just,
So if council is inclined, there are several positions that you can take. You can support the application as a whole. You can support some of the variances and not other variances, or you can oppose the application or remain neutral. My feedback so far, as I'm receiving it from you, is that you may want to support the application. If you have any other feedback for Bob, feel free to give it to him. Otherwise, a motion would be appropriate.
anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Oh, to be clear, it's a motion to recommend
To recommend
approval.
to zone,
Okay, thank you. Great.
correct, okay. Let's do that again, make that motion.
I make the motion for the whole project.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Welcome, good luck in
Thanks for
zoning.
purchasing that property. Brittany, no manager matters, correct? Okay. Should we call it? Okay. The next item on the agenda is consider adopting Montgomery County 2017 Hazard Mitigation Plan update. Mr. Peters? Yes.
So the county has and is required to establish a hazard mitigation plan. Each municipality in each county, not just Montgomery County, but also Bucks County and surrounding counties, are required to consider adoption of that plan as their hazard mitigation management plan. This resolution that was drafted and prepared adopts the Montgomery County 2017 Hazard Mitigation Plan. It also provides for implementation of that plan in the borough, and then contains the boilerplate repealer savings and effective date clauses. The resolution is appropriate for council's adoption this evening if you so choose.
I just have a question. Has Borough Administration and Operations looked at it, and are they comfortable with it?
It is my understanding that they are, yes.
So we need a motion for that one?
Someone like to,
It would be a motion to approve the resolution. Britt, you know the resolution number? Resolution 15 of 2018.
Was that plan actually in our Dropbox? I saw the resolution. I don't know that I saw the plan.
I did not.
I did not. We don't have to do this
I
tonight.
would
We
prefer
can,
not to do
let's
this
hold it
tonight.
till the voting meeting in 2 weeks, and we can
And we will make
look
sure,
at that.
so the plan is available online. It is very long, but we will make sure that we get it in your Dropbox so you can take a look. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. The next item on the agenda is from Ms. Barton on the Sewer Authority update. Oh, I'm sorry, unless we have any legal matters.
No legal matter.
Okay.
Legal matters.
Ms. Barton?
I had Brittany print out a brief description of what went on at the Sewer Authority. Unfortunately, I was not there. I was at another meeting that night. So basically, they touched on things that we're still working on within the Sewer Authority. Our capping will be done, I believe, by the 15th of next month. That's our deadline for that. We are doing the sewer, I'm sorry, I'm not with it tonight. We're televising the pipes on Caldwell. We're getting ready to do liners for the drainage down there. And that's going to be, great. Did Steve talk to you about them possibly doing that at night?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know if they're going to need permits for that?
No, they're not going to need permits, we're just going to have to, it's outside of the normal hours that the ordinance allows. We'll have to have a discussion. No, that's not supposed to happen until the 23rd of August.
Okay. Okay. So, we have also had some contact with the contractors here in the borough. They're not happy with their escrow amount. We are setting up a meeting with them at the authority building to discuss things and as to why we are charging what we are. So that will be set up probably by the end of the month. We're hoping that they'll actually come to one of our board meetings this month to discuss what's going on. And I'm sorry, but I am not feeling well tonight, so.
It's okay. Thank you very much,
Hang in
Anita.
there. You're welcome.
Thank you for your update. Okay, the last item on the agenda is consider dedicating the public meeting room at Borough Hall in the honor of Jerry McTammany. And I'm going to refer to Mr. Stokely for this.
Yeah, we talked about this before, and it kind of got away from me, but we talked about dedicating this room to Jerry McTammany, our President of Council. 32 years he was on council, and he's done a lot for the borough, the revitalization. I mean, to me, he kind of started this revitalization off with the Weinmans, and look at our town today. And I think we owe this to this man to dedicate this room to him. And I think maybe we were talking maybe in October, Colleen?
That would be a goal if council agrees. I know Mr. Peters does have a resolution for us to consider. And then we'll just have to decide, if we want to do a plaque, which I think we should, make sure we have enough time if we do it in October to get that done, and to invite the people that we should invite to be here along with all our residents. So,
Thank you.
Mr. Peters?
Thank you, President Leonard. So, generally speaking, when you want to go through the process of dedicating a room, and I think it's an excellent idea, Bob, that you came up with. I think you should seriously consider doing it. I was quite impressed when I reviewed the history of Jerry and what he did for the town. and based on that, prepared a resolution for your consideration. The resolution that I prepared certainly doesn't cover everything that he did, but it does explain and justify council's decision to name this room after him. My suggestion would be, you can vote on the resolution I prepared tonight, you can take a look at it, and I would love any feedback you may have with respect to the language of the resolution. I did not know Jerry personally, so I'm only able to draft it based on the feedback that I received from council, which was excellent. I mean, it gave me a good look into the type of man that he was. My resolution, as you can see, the most interesting part, I think, is the whereas clauses, which outlines everything he's done for the borough. The actual meat of it, where you're actually doing something, it's in section 1, and I'll read it. The public meeting room of the Borough of Conshohocken, located at 400 Fayette Street, Conshohocken Borough, is hereby named the Gerald M. McTamney Meeting Room forevermore in honor of Gerald M. McTamney and all he did for the Borough of Conshohocken. Show all those present therein strive to live up to Mr. McTamney's legacy of public service, fairness, and fidelity. So that is the meat of the resolution. It is up to council whether or not you'd like to give me some more feedback with respect to what's in it.
What do you think? It sounded good to me.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
I think
We
it's
don't
great.
want to make it
Thanks.
too long.
Yeah, I was okay with it.
Right.
I did note myself that I have a few spelling errors, so I will fix,
Yes.
I will fix all of those, but aside from that, I think the resolution, if you adopt it this evening, we can then begin the process of thinking through how you want to do something more formal.
Right.
At that time, I would suggest that we print the resolution up in a manner that we can provide to his family. Someone from council should at that point read the resolution, and a plaque or something like that would be appropriate.
Right, and Mr. Cole has also asked to do a
Wonderful.
brief presentation on everything that Mr. McTamney has done.
Great.
So we have plans that we can work with to make it a very special evening,
Very nice.
okay? So
Thank
we
you.
would need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Actually, I would just like to make a comment because I am in favor, but similar to your situation, I did not personally know Mr. McTamney. I understand he was in service here from the borough from 1972, served as council president, and was here for 18 years. And I trust that what my fellow council people have experienced, as well as the research that you have done, so I'm certainly in favor. I'm just not speaking from a place of personal experience, but I am in favor.
32 years.
He was president.
18
He was
years as
president for
president,
18,
yeah.
but he
32 on
was
council.
on
Yeah.
council for 32 years.
Okay, well, that's not quite as old as you are then.
Oh, boy.
I look good, though.
Okay, so
Okay, let's do that motion again.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Brett, I will get you a edited copy and we'll get it to Colleen. Thank you.
Anyone have public comment this evening? Please come up and state your name and address, please. Yes, you do. Mr.
Donald
Morrison?
Morrison, 303 6th Avenue. Just to let you know, the rugby is coming to near to the end almost. This Saturday will be our playoff game. I did state early to some of the council members that the game was at 1 p.m. It will now be at 5 p.m. So if people who could not make it at 1 now can make it at 5. This is a very historical game this year for us, is because this will be our closing of our 9th season in our borough, and we'll be coming into the 10th anniversary next year. And for me, it will be an honor to see some of the people there, because we got guests from out of town coming in and hear about so much about Conshohocken and what we were all about. And it's nice that if I'm available, I can introduce who I have been pleasured to work with over the last years as a child in this town, now as a grown adult. And we're next year's event in May, we hope to have a parade some changes with the organization, with new leadership at the helm, and some nice ideas with the home parties after will be in town. We have a local sponsor who is almost ready to commit. We have a new advertisement company from Eighth and Harry is going to be doing all our advertisements for us.
That's wonderful.
And I was in a panic strict a couple of weeks ago because we wanted to do a logo, and it was too soon for us to commit to do it this year. So because we wanted to make sure that we had the right stuff for the field and the right thing for council to be proud that we work together as a team. So with that, Saturday, 5 p.m.
Okay.
Appreciate if you could all make it, and it will be a great day. And also, George, congratulations on being the new chief, and best of luck in the next couple of months, and happy to have you there.
Thank you, Donald.
Thank you, Don.
All right, Joe Farino from Old Elm Street. I wanted to ask if, because I did send a email to Stephanie, but since little Luciano has been
Yes.
bored, I'm sure she
Enzo.
has not had a chance to
Enzo.
see it.
Not Luciano.
Oh, sorry. Lorenzo, excuse me. Okay, Lorenzo. Even better. Yeah, it's okay. So with the PennDOT repaving of West Elm Street, I did let her know that there's one entrance on West Elm for the Grand community that has 2 garages, and that's the only entrance to get to those 2. And I was wondering if we had any influence as to talking to PennDOT at all, just to see if there's any way to make the lives of those residents any easier, because they're not going to be able to get out of their garage or into it for I'm not sure how long. And if not, we're going to have to let them know that they're going to have to find alternative parking, which is probably, close to 50 to 100 cars. I'm not sure exactly how many there are.
Ray?
We have Frank Healy, our traffic engineer, has had conversations with PennDOT. So my understanding, PennDOT is still planning on doing that at night. So the effects for that location would be minimal. It will not coincide with anything the sewer authority is doing at this point. And even if it were, the direction that both of these projects would be going would not be at one particular location at the same time. And now the indication that the Caldwell Lane portion of the sewer authority work will be done at night. I think the effects to the area will be minimal.
So what I'm picturing is they are pulling up a pretty deep portion of the street. So do you think that road's going to stay open, like still travel? Like you could,
PennDOT?
yeah, PennDOt.
PennDOT is just doing mill and overlay. So they'll basically mill down approximately 2 inches of the roadway,
So you can still travel on it then?
and you absolutely will be able to travel on it.
All right.
Their project, heavy weather, would probably be no longer than a week. And the fact that it would be done at night, I still think that those will, and I still think that that is the case. They have basically let Myers, the company who they contracted, handle everything. So there's really no dealing with PennDOT at this point, it's dealing with that contractor. So we're still trying to get correct information as to when this will take place. But there's no indication that that will take place anywhere in the period of time that the sewer authority.
Gotcha. And just for some clarification then, because I thought, wasn't that road in the way it is because the road couldn't handle the weight of the trucks?
Well, that I guess it would be an engineering question, but I think that is correct, that a lot of the problems with that road are because of the truck traffic on it. And as you know, we have through the police chief, through the engineering, and myself, we have made an attempt to contact PennDOT to talk about the reduction of truck traffic.
No, I appreciate that. I think what my question's getting down to is like is the milling and all that going to prevent any further truck traffic? Should there be more on it or the same?
No, it will not. It will, the mill and overlay will meet the requirements time frame that will stay in condition, the pristine condition it will be when it's first put on. That may be affected by the amount of truck traffic. But right now, we have no indication that they're going to do anything other than the mill and overlay. And I think from the information that we recently got, that the bottom portion of that roadway is sound enough to handle just a little bit of it.
All right, and that was changed, wasn't it? Wasn't it supposed to be deeper at one point? Like they were supposed to like dig all the way down deep to do whatever they need to do to accommodate the truck traffic or the weights? I'm just curious. That's
they, not that I'm aware of. I know that we had made it very clear to them that was an issue, but they had made it very clear to us that they understood that was an issue. So they are in a 5-year cycle of doing roadways, which is something different than they've ever done. So it's new to them, it's new to us, and we may be back on that 5-year map because of the amount of truck traffic we have on that road. I don't think they would guarantee that would last. It's supposed to last 10, 15 years, but I don't think that they can guarantee.
Yeah.
There's a grade on that, there's a light at the end of that, in Colwell Lane. There should be substantially less truck traffic because, from my understanding, there will be substantially less traffic into the steel plant in the next several years. And I think that had something to do with it, but if we're successful in what the police chief, engineering company, and myself have tried to do with PennDOT in reducing the truck traffic, period, that's affecting both the residential part of that street further down, I don't think it'll be an issue.
All right, great. And one last thing too, if you're going to talk to some of these commercial buildings about the trash, I'd love to know who they're contracting with because at the Grand, our contract is up, so we're going to be going out to bid too.
We
And
will
if
let you know who we have recommendations from the company, the consulting company that we deal with. We'll pass those recommendations.
yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Any more public comment? Okay. Council comments, we'll start with Mayor Aronson.
Thank you. As you may have seen, we had our trail intersections redone by the county recently. They were widened, repaved. Our crosswalks were repainted. Big, bright signs telling motorists that there's a trail crossing ahead were added. Chief Metz and I took a tour of all the intersections last week. And I think the chief was pretty impressed with what the county did. So if you haven't gotten a chance to see it, definitely take a look. The feedback I've received from our running and biking clubs has been very, very positive. The chief and I also think it's a good opportunity to do an outreach with the police and some of our running and biking clubs. So we're working on setting a date for that. So we'll do like a bike and trail safety class. So we'll make sure to tell everyone what that date is. And then also this Saturday, August 4th, the EAC is doing a children's rain barrel class. So teaching kids what a rain barrel is, what the process is. They're also going to do a later class in a couple months for adults, but this one's just for kids. It's at 10 a.m. at the Conshohocken Library. 15 slots already filled, so they're actually filling up pretty quickly.
That's awesome. And that's this Saturday?
That's this Saturday, yeah. That would be great for Dominic to go to. And that's all I have for now.
Okay. Mr. Stokely.
Yes, Colleen, thank you. As you're aware, the town is getting very overloaded with parking. We're having a lot of parking problems. And being in town this month, I have, actually I got to ask Mike if I talk about one of my clients, so I have to recuse myself? My cleaners at 8th and Hollowell, Cheltenham Cleaners.
Right.
They have a business. They're a very nice family. There's a resident that has 2 vehicles. They park one vehicle right in front of the front door, and they park the other vehicle right at the corner. Now, the idea is the seniors are complaining because I do it too. It's 20% Wednesday. You pull up on the corner, you leave your car running, you run in the cleaners, you drop your stuff off, and you're on your way. Now, these cars don't move. They don't move. And it's a resident two doors from the cleaner. They have two cars. The whole block is 2-hour parking from Fayette to Hollowell, okay? So I guess they don't want to have, I guess they don't want stickers because, or they don't want to move, they don't want stickers so they can park in the 2-hour spaces. So they put them right in front of the cleaners where there is no 2-hour parking. So what I'm proposing in the long run, and I talked about this 10 years ago, and with the trash trucks, the trucks, we need to create, and we talked about this before, but it never went anywhere. We need to create loading and unloading zones. From a certain time, like the Cheltenham cleaners, we could put a loading and unloading spot there so people can come up and drop off their clothes and be on their way. We can't have residents parking in front of businesses and stopping their flow of their business.
So I did speak to Mr. Peters today. It's not exactly what we want is loading and unloading. It would be 15-minute parking or 10-minute parking.
10, 5.
From certain times of the day so that while the businesses are open, it would make it, right.
So, yeah, okay, that's fine, that'll be good. But we talked about with the businesses on Fayette Street and all through the town. Now, if you go to 9th and Fayette, where the businesses are there, okay, you got the pizza shop, you got Stone Rose. I come up 9th Avenue, I sit at the light. The other day, there's a trash truck and there's a tractor and trailer right in front of those stores. The trash truck's sticking out almost onto 9th Avenue. So whoever makes that turn, they have to actually go in the other lane to make that turn. So if we took those spaces from 6 a.m. in the morning or 7 a.m. for the noise and did it till 10 o'clock, and these owners of these establishments would tell these vendors, you have to come at these hours to unload your stuff. Because we're looking out right now because of these cars coming down Fayette. There's going to be an accident. Somebody's going to get killed. We had somebody killed in front of the church down on 4th Avenue, and it's going to happen. And believe me, it's going to keep happening. All over town, you got, and I don't want to mention businesses, but Pizza Time, they double park.
All the time.
But
Right,
I mean,
so
it's-
15-minute parking or 10-minute parking
Yes,
would,
it would
in
help.
that area
It
would help.
Just like Tony and Joe's. Tony and Joe's was never no parking there, so they put a little drop-off there. It helps that area down there, because that's a disaster down there.
Right.
In that little area down there, with
Right.
parking and trucks pulling up. It's really chaos down there sometimes.
So this is a bigger topic than just
No, it is.
certain
Right,
areas.
we're
I'm just
just-
trying to get ahead of all this
Right,
stuff. and
correct,
giving
correct,
everybody-
but it falls right into, I think it's time that we create a task force. And
And that's
have,
what Mr. Peters
They
suggested.
said that.
right, so we would create a task force to look at the bigger picture with all of the examples that we have to figure out what is our solution for the
Right.
future.
That's spot on consistent with your comp plan. too.
Correct, and
Your comp plan talks about this interaction between businesses and residents and parking and how we try to make all of it work, so that's perfect.
So if we can work together to figure out who wants to host, be the chair of a task force for that,
Bob?
start that.
Hey, listen, I wanted, somebody's going to really
Right, and,
get hurt.
right.
And that's just a start. I want to kick this off because it's going to happen, all this new stuff we have coming in town.
Okay.
It's going to be a disaster for us if we don't get it under
And
control.
I think it's better to have a plan than do a piecemeal
right.
block by
Correct.
block.
And
That we
that's-
have
which-
precedents set,
which-
maybe there's only 2 spots on each block.
Right.
Because that could be a problem too, then there's no parking
Right.
on
And we
an
have to-
area. So
right.
we have to
So-
look at it as a comprehensive.
We
And
have
the
to
se-
look at it area-wise,
Right.
because they're all different, so.
So Mike, would
Right.
you kind of look to put together what, putting a task force like that, to have, ground rules and who we would want
How
to put
many?
on it, how many, those kinds of
So
things to get
what you
started?
want is we could do it just by resolution, probably. It would be a committee of council that is we'll call it a task force, right? And we would set forth membership, we would set forth their responsibilities. We would, set ground rules in terms of how they, so it's only going to be an advisory group of council, right? It's always-
Correct.
And would that be something we have, like, maybe business owners in?
Yeah.
I would invite
Business
a
owners?
whole splattering of the
Right.
community so we can address
Residents, yeah.
everyone's
Okay.
So why don't I
concerns.
brainstorm and come up with what it would look like?
That'd be great.
And then I could get something for you guys. You can probably have something to talk about next meeting.
I actually have it on the September 5th agenda.
You're awesome.
Then I have a little bit more
Oh, which
time,
one?
but-
September 5th.
Jumbo parking task force,
For which agenda?
the September 5th work session.
September 5th.
That was-
So that
I
would
will
give-
say that's
so that
pretty
would
darn
give you
quick,
time
Brittany.
to pull that stuff together.
And then what I'll do is, so Bob, I'll probably shoot it over to you a little bit earlier, so you can take a look and give me some
Right.
feedback. And then
Okay.
And Mike, you would consult with Chief Matz also?
100%.
Right, okay, that he would help you.
So the second part of this, commercial properties, okay? I have, this is from 2002.
Where do you dig all this out of?
This is a parking lot that was, and Chris, you'll remember this probably. This is a parking lot that a client paid to have drawn up at 9th and Fayette behind Lenny's, a parking lot to propose there, and it never happened. Okay, so this is something that we can bring back to the table. It works. It was drawn up by an architect, and that was 2002. And then we have another one at 20 East 2nd Avenue, next to the Piramontes. It's a 2-story office building. We denied them a parking spaces on the side of their building, okay? We denied them, and that was 2009, okay? Now, their tenants all moved out of the building because there's no parking down there.
Some parking.
So these are residents that are starving here, I mean, businesses that we need to help.
Okay.
And we have this First Avenue lot, which I saved, that we bought, the Flacco's property that burnt down, Peggy Schaefer
Right.
at First Avenue.
Right,
We have that triangle lot,
Yeah.
which we rent out for peanuts,
right,
but it serves a purpose right now.
Right.
But we have to start talking about this stuff because
Right.
this task force can create these parking
okay.
spaces.
So for this part of it, I think we'll have to get together a little bit and put something together to put on the working agenda and make it a little more specific. Because it's two separate things. I think combining them would be a little too hard, but doing them separately and working on them separately, we can get more done that way.
And I have not found it yet, but I
don't know about that. I think it all needs to be under a governance structure to figure out what we're working through. So I don't know what you're talking about separating.
It'd be the parking lots,
the lots.
the parking lots from the, yeah, you got it, yeah, from the signs.
Gotcha.
Separate, yeah, that's all.
So you're talking, it's between on-street and off-street parking.
Yes.
Right. I
Do
mean,
we
it-
own that lot that you showed? Who owns?
No, this is the owner of the building where Lenny's
isn't
is.
that going up for sale?
What's that?
I-
I think it was just sold.
Was it just sold?
Yeah.
I knew that I heard that,
So
so.
is there a building on it, or?
What's
is it
that?
open?
He's talking about the yard behind.
To do parking behind that building.
Right.
And because I had at least 3 conversations with Gary Emilio about it.
Yes.
And the issues-
That's where I got this from.
And the issues were mainly variances needed for buffering.
Right.
Because it's a private lot.
Right.
With respect to Piramonte being, or the building next to Piramonte being denied zoning, that was 2 parking spaces, and there were concerns about the accessibility on the curb ramps. And the other reason, that was not to provide general parking, because it's only enough room for 2 spaces.
But it's 4 spaces.
Well, 2 or 4.
And they had an architect engineer draw it up.
It was only for the owners of the building.
So they're more zoning
For their general.
variance issues then?
Right,
That makes
right.
sense.
But the idea was that the church, the school, okay, they worried about the school children. But now the school has all kinds of cars coming out of everywhere. Okay, that's something else we have to address to help them, that situation out.
Okay.
Okay? So number 3, I'll do this real fast, okay? This has to do with stop signs. All right, I'll be real quick about it. I come out of the park, Sutcliffe Drive there, on this Sutcliffe Lane, and if the cars are coming in the morning from 11th Avenue to the gym at 10th Avenue, to 6th Avenue, to Brook Road, people go all through them stop signs right through. People don't stop, they go right down there and don't stop at any of them stop signs.
Having the same problem at Fourth and Harrison.
It's all over town.
Fourth and Maple.
It's all over town.
Everywhere.
So we need to do something. I mean, it's getting to the point, and thanks, Ray, he got the bushes cut on the one resident, so people can see coming out of that. But the time you get out of that drive, there's cars on you because they don't stop at the stop sign. So, and I mean, it's all over town. It's all over town, so.
Chief Mitch, it's all you.
I'm aware if you were going to stop.
Take them down, let's cut them all down. If nobody's gonna stop, let's just send Ray's guys out, we'll cut them all down. You know, why spend the money?
If there's an overall point, well, I love to hear it. You want to sit down with me,
I'll tell you, Ray,
I'll show you numbers.
How about if,
Let me say one more thing, all right? When my children were young, okay, they hung out in White Marsh a lot, okay? And White Marsh was one of the toughest townships in this area with enforcement and everything else. And I used to tell my kids, and even the judge said it, keep your kids out of White Marsh, please, you know? It was stupid stuff. But let's send a message to these people, especially the people coming through our town.
oh, he's right.
Give them a ticket that they'll cry. They'll actually cry about it. I mean, we need to stop it. We need to set a precedent. And hey, I'm not going through Conchi. You know what? I got pulled over there 4 times, you know? So we have to do something to stop it because look at 4th and Fayette. The old man walking across ruined 2 lives. The young girl that wasn't paying attention, and the guy, 82 years old, he gets hit by a car at that age. It's a shame. It's a shame. And while I'm on Fayette Street, the pedestrian signs have to come out. You can't have 4 lanes in that kind of traffic, in that speed, because we had in front of the dress shop years ago. The van was on the out, the van was on the inside, it stopped, and the car was coming the outside and hit the little girl in front of the dress shop.
Right.
And that
So,
happens
Bob,
a lot. It happens up at CVS.
one of
This
the,
road's too fast for 4 lanes.
right. One of the things that we're going to address, and we did discuss with Chief Metz a little bit for the police department, is education of the residents for their responsibilities in the crosswalks and crossing the streets, because they're not very clear on it either. They assume that it's all the responsibility of the driver, and it is not. So education on that, starting with the children, and at different outreach programs, I think that's a good way to start. But you're absolutely correct on the 4 lanes. It's very dangerous.
And we're just waiting. If we
Right.
don't do it, this is something we should do tomorrow. Take them out. Take them out because
I don't know that
it's
we can do that.
going to be a disaster.
It's a state law.
The state, well, you know what PennDOT wants to do? PennDOT don't want to slow traffic up. They want to speed it up
Correct.
through our town, through our 10 blocks. That's what
So-
they want to do.
So I think maybe that we all know that this is a problem and something that we need to work on.
Right, that's why I
Maybe-
brought it up, to get it started.
Right. So maybe that, on that note, you, the mayor, and maybe the police chief could sit down and come up with some ideas for that. And then we can, again, bring it back to a working meeting. And next time, maybe we'll remember, let's put it on the agenda,
Right.
okay?
And I'm going to find that book, the parking study we did
That'd be great.
5 years ago. It's this thick, and we had the people come to the Marywood Park House.
Right.
We had people come from the neyborhoods, and we talked about parking, so maybe
Right.
we should do something like that again.
Right.
Which
Yeah,
you
that'd be
talked
good for
about.
them.
Right.
Yeah,
It will.
maybe get a donation off them, you know?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Nothing.
Tina?
No, nothing.
Jane?
Briefly, I'll just tell you, we had a very productive meeting for the Marywood Park House and the Friends of Conshohocken Parks on July 23rd. We're moving forward with picking out a logo and presentation materials, so once we are firm on what we believe would be appropriate, we'll share it with all of council and the mayor. And then our next meeting is going to be August 13th, so things are going well.
Ike? Karen?
Thank you.
Nothing on the dog park committee?
No.
Okay, I know there have been a couple meetings, maybe at the next workshop we could have an update on that. Okay? Everyone good? Meeting adjourned.